What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Figures of Sport podcast. You're with your host, Brandon, and we've got a lot to talk about today. So, today we are filming, just to let everybody know, we are filming on Monday, July 7th. So, if you guys are unaware, that's what I'm here for. We are going to majority of this episode is going to be talking about the MLB All-Star game. Definitely, there's a lot of storylines around that. Snubs, who made the team, who didn't, and before we jump into that, the first thing I do want to talk about is just some quick NBA free agency stuff, or some trades, I guess. Um, One of the things that happened since the last episode was aired was something that I mentioned in our last episode. Deandre Ayton was bought out of his contract with the Portland Trailblazers. So now he has signed a 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. That deal is official. It is, again, a 2-year deal with a player opt out after the first season. So that's going to give him a chance to be able to play alongside LeBron, Luka Doncic for the Lakers this upcoming season. And if he plays well, he can go out and try to get himself a larger long-term contract. Um, Again, when we saw that buyout happen, we weren't really too surprised just because of the fact that we knew that the Portland Trailblazers had a logjam at the center position. Obviously, they went out, they acquired the young center from the Portland or from the Memphis Grizzlies in the trade, Young Hansen. They had Donovan Clingan. They still have Robert Williams on their roster. So moving off of DeAndre Ayton was something that we maybe didn't see coming, but we knew someone on that roster at the center position was going to um, be moved at some point. There's just too many guys. There's not enough minutes for those guys to play, especially with the direction that Portland is heading with some of their younger players. They definitely want to give them some more time to play and develop. So we knew that one of those centers was going to be the veteran centers, at least between DeAndre Ayton and Robert Williams. There's not going to be enough minutes, and someone was going to be unhappy. So, personally, now my thoughts on this DeAndre Ayton move for the Lakers is they finally got themselves a big man. And they had Jackson Hayes last season, but we saw that at times he did end up becoming a serviceable player for them. So now he's kind of going to move to that backup role behind DeAndre Ayton. Um, Now, DeAndre Ayton, I know since the signing went official with the Lakers, we've seen on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, on Instagram, so many clips of the one possession where DeAndre Ayton is standing under the rim, allowing the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic to grab offensive rebound after offensive rebound, to put it up again to try to score, and DeAndre Ayton just stood there. So I hope that we see a different version of DeAndre Ayton with the Lakers. I think being with Luka Doncic and LeBron James, just in a different role, more of a winning basketball type of role now. Uh, we might see a different version of him. We might see signs of um, his former skill set. A motor on offense, on the defensive boards. Um, it'll be interesting to see how he fits. But again, I think Ayton can be a good fit for this team with Luka, with LeBron. His defense does leave a little bit to be desired at times, but I think he can eat rebounds off the glass for sure. I think he's going to be serviceable for them in the lob threat area, which Luka Doncic absolutely loves, having a center that can kind of be a lob threat off the pick and roll. So I'm not upset at the signing at all. I definitely think it was what the Lakers needed. But again, I think that the Lakers have done very little going through free agency for the last week so far. Their biggest signing being DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, and then of course re-signing um, Jackson Hayes to a contract, which he also, I believe, it has not been confirmed, but there are rumors that he has a no trade clause in his contract, which I think for him is something that he said, I want to be in LA. I don't want to leave, which means if you want to try to ship me off at the trade deadline, you got to really ask for my permission. I believe he's one of 3 players in the entire NBA that has a no trade clause, the other 2 being LeBron James and Bradley Beal. So, very interesting contract situation, if true, for Jackson Hayes. But again, I just think he wants to stay in LA and he doesn't want to be um, just shipped off at the deadline. He wants to continue to perform there because, again, under JJ Redick, he did become very serviceable. But we saw that in the playoffs, the Lakers tend to go in those series. They were more often than not going a lot smaller, playing Luka, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, LeBron, and I think there was occasional times where we saw Maxi Kleber and that was a bit of a shock. But again, it was more of a smaller lineup for that team. Occasionally using Jared Vanderbilt as well. So I think it's a good signing for them. I think that Aiton is going to bring them some size and obviously some depth at the center position. But again, I just don't know if the Lakers are going to have enough to compete with some of these other teams in the Western Conference this year. The Nuggets have only gotten better. The Mavericks, when fully healthy, are a solid team. The Grizzlies are always a gritty team. Again, I know I mentioned in the last episode that they have Ja still, they have Jaren Jackson Jr., but they're a team that when healthy, and when they are all performing at their highs that we can kind of expect them to, the players on that roster they fit well together. So the loss of Desmond Bain is going to hurt them, but it's going to be interesting to see because the Grizzlies, like I said, are a gritty team, a grinded out team. So you never can really count them out. And then outside of those teams, of course, you got the Houston Rockets, San Antonio Spurs. The Warriors are going to be there with a full season of Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry. Um, and, I just think that the Lakers needed to do more to kind of restructure this roster a little bit, especially if this is towards the end of LeBron James's career. I think if you want to go all in to win a championship with LeBron and Luka, this year, if this is LeBron's last year, you really do need to have um, some different construction on this roster. But yeah, so that's my thoughts so far on the Lakers' latest addition in free agency. And again, I just think that it's just not enough to compete in this Western Conference. I think they can be a team that is going to be a top 6 seed, just because of the fact that you have LeBron James, you have Luka Doncic, you have Austin Reeves, guys that can uh, play high level basketball, but it's just not enough in my opinion, for them to make a deep postseason run to win an NBA championship. Um, that's just my thoughts on that. Now, a trade that broke this morning, Monday morning, July 7th, as I said, when we're recording this, is a 3-team trade between the Utah Jazz, the Miami Heat, and the Los Angeles Clippers. Something that I did not see coming at all. But Norman Powell was traded to the Miami Heat. While John Collins was shipped off to the Clippers, and then Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson were shipped to the Utah Jazz. Now, when I saw this trade this morning, it definitely took me by surprise. I thought that Norman Powell had an incredible year with the Clippers, and I just think that this is going to be an opportunity for him to kind of really shine in a different situation. We saw that when Norman Powell was playing alongside James Harden, he was scoring at a high level. He was producing on the court, and then when Kawhi Leonard came back, he kind of obviously fell back into that third option role, and his numbers dropped a bit. And I just think that he the he wasn't a great long term fit alongside Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, right? And the Clippers ended up getting some size, which they definitely needed in John Collins, a guy who can grab rebounds, he can um, score the ball, And again, he just brings them some size, some depth, some versatility, and I think he's going to be a potentially better fit for the Clippers than a Norman Powell is. But in my personal opinion, the only reason that I look at this trade and I have some questions is because of the fact that we know Kawhi Leonard tends to miss a lot of games. So now you're putting pressure on James Harden and John Collins and other guys around them like Zubac to be able to lead this team to the playoffs. Because again, it sucks to say, but Kawhi Leonard has shown year after year that he is not a guy that is going to play 82 games, 75 games, 70 games, and maybe even 65 games. He's a guy that tends to miss a lot of time, and he is an exceptional talent, a great two-way player. But again, he is a guy that tends to miss a lot of time, and having a guy like Norman Powell in your starting lineup that can come in and score 18 to 22 points a game on any given night is very valuable in the NBA, especially when there's times where James Harden might struggle, where Zubac may struggle. He's not going to be a guy that he's your number one option at the center position. So um, for me, I just think that long term fit for the Clippers, this kind of works out. But I think when you kind of remember the tendencies of a Kawhi Leonard, it it does raise some question marks. Um, Now, Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson to the Utah Jazz, that trading Kevin Love in 2025 seems crazy. I think Kevin Love is almost pretty close to being on his way out. So I'm not too sure if this was a deal that this was just a deal to kind of get John Collins off the book, similarly to how they moved how they bought out um, Jordan Clarkson. So I think they're just trying to give a lot of time to their young guys, bringing in a couple of vets who have won um, like Kevin Love, and Kyle Anderson is a guy who's played with a lot of good teams, the Warriors for some time, and maybe just help develop their younger guys a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I just when I see this trade initially, I have questions as far as why the Clippers would do this, but I think for the Miami Heat, this is a fantastic trade. Um, and adding a guy like Norman Powell to play alongside a Tyler Hero, a Bam Adebayo, I think it's a great fit for him, and I think he's going to be in a better position to be a a scorer and a contributor to that team. So we'll just have to kind of see how this plays out. But I do think um, that potentially with the Miami Heat acquiring Norman Powell now, they bringing it back to the Lakers have inquired about Andrew Wiggins, the asking price for them, or from the Miami Heat. And I think that now with the addition of Norman Powell, that may lower the price just a little bit, where the Lakers may be able to offer a fair trade and fair compensation for an Andrew Wiggins. Because, again, I think the playing time between the two now is going to. Obviously, Norman Powell doesn't want to come off the bench anymore at this point in his career, and it's going to be hard to kind of run a rotation that gives them both a fair chance. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on that. Of course, you guys know that we will absolutely be following all this news and reporting it back to you guys because that's just what we do here. So, but again, I wanted to take a majority of today's episode, and I did want to talk about the MLB All-Star game. Obviously, the MLB All-Star game is in a couple of weeks, and it's the Midsummer Classic, one of the best, in my personal opinion. And it's not just because I'm a baseball fan, but it is, in my personal opinion, one of the best All-Star games of sports. The mid-season classic is fantastic. You got the home run derby, you got the All-Star game, and when you look at some of the things like the NBA All-Star game, every year it seems to be different. Um, NFL obviously has the Pro Bowl at the end of the season where they don't even tackle anybody anymore. It's flag football and a bunch of skills content. It's just not exciting anymore, right? And I think for the MLB, you still play a game. you still play a full 9 inning game. You still got to win, and you get to see your favorite players competing. So I'm really excited about the All-Star teams, the All-Star game itself. And again, we're going to talk about today who made the All-Star team and who didn't. And we're going to have some big takes on that coming up shortly. But first things first, we're going to start with who did make the MLB All-Star team. We're going to start with the American League. So the starters at the catcher position, you've got Cal Raleigh, who's having one of the best seasons of a catcher of all time, and one of the best power displays we've almost ever seen. I think right now he's up to 34 home runs on the season, um, and he's closing in on Barry Bonds' record of, I believe it was 39 before the All-Star game. So that would be incredible to see, doing it at the catcher position, a position that is extremely taxing on your body. For him to kind of be out there every single day and performing at a high level, it's been fantastic to see Cal Raleigh. Um, at the first base position, we got Vlad Guerrero Jr. from the Toronto Blue Jays. At second base, you've got Gleyber Torres from the Detroit Tigers, something that I don't think anyone really expected to see while he was with New York. Um, you see a lot of fans asking for him to get out. They didn't want him there anymore. And then in his first season with Detroit, he's having an incredible resurgence. Um, Great story just to see. Um, and then at the third base position, you've got Jose Ramirez from the Cleveland Guardians. At shortstop, you've got the rookie from the Oakland Athletics, Jacob Wilson. The outfield is lining up to be Aaron Judge from the Yankees, Riley Green from the Tigers, and center field is Javier Baez, who last made an All-Star game with the Chicago Cubs as a shortstop. Javier Baez is having an incredible resurgence. He is performing at levels that we only saw during really his time with the Chicago Cubs years ago. And it has been an incredible story just to see Javier Baez kind of rejuvenated in Detroit. His last couple years, people have said that his contract is one of the worst in baseball, if not the worst. He was swinging at every pitch, um, whether it was 6 inches inside or 12 inches outside or 12 inches into the lower part of the box. He has completely changed his attitude with this Detroit team. He's competing at a high level, he's playing at a high level, and he's contributing at a high level for this Detroit team. That's why they are one of the best teams in baseball this year, because they're getting contributions from guys like Javier Baez, from guys like Gleyber Torres. Again, another great story, and obviously having some of their other pieces such as um, Torque. You've got Colt Keith, small, guys that are just doing great in their roles. Riley Green, um, and again, seeing Javier Baez as a guy who grew up in Chicago. Yes, I'm a Sox fan, but growing up and watching Javier Baez, you saw how electric he was. So now seeing him for the Detroit Tigers competing and contributing to this team, it's been great to see. Um, at the designated hitter position for the American League, you've got Ryan O'Hearn, who's making his first All-Star appearance. His birthday is a few weeks after the All-Star game, so that's a great story. He's representing the Baltimore Orioles, and he's been having an incredible year. He started off the season splitting time at first base and DH with Ryan Mountcastle, but Mountcastle has fallen off and O'Hearn has taken off. So incredible to see that. Now for the reserves, you've got the Alejandro at the center. Apologize. At the catcher position, you've got Alejandro Kirk from the Blue Jays. Um, Infielders are Jonathan Aranda from the Tampa Bay Rays, Alex Bregman from the Red Sox, Jazz Chisholm from the Yankees, Brandon Lowe from the Rays, Jeremy Pena from the Houston Astros, Bobby Witt Jr. from Kansas City, and outfielders are Byron Buxton from Minnesota, Stephen Kwan from the Cleveland Guardians, Julio Rodriguez from Seattle, and Brent Rooker from the Las Vegas Athletics, Sacramento Athletics. Um, yeah. And then the starting pitchers for the um, American League are Hunter Brown, Chris Bubich, Garrett Crochet, Jacob DeGrom, Max Fried, Yusei Kikuchi, Tariq Skubal, Shane Smith, and Brian Wu. Um, Now, some of those pitchers that we're going to talk about really quickly. Hunter Brown has been lights out this entire season. Um, Bubich has been an incredible pitcher for the Kansas City Royals this year. Um, and he is producing at a high level. But there are his teammate Seth Lugo is also having a great year. He is a guy that is an honorable mention for a snub from the All-Star team. But I do think we are going to keep an eye on the Kansas City Royals as the trade deadline nears, because if they fall further out of contention, um, they could be looking to move some of their players on that roster. Garrett Crochet, again, a guy who was acquired over the offseason in the trade with the Chicago White Sox. He has been one of the most dominant pitchers, not just in the American League, but in baseball in general, striking guys out at such a high level. And this is his second full season as a starter, and he is producing incredibly. So that's, as a Chicago White Sox fan, that it hurts to see, because you wish he was on your team still. But um, overall, I think he has been great. And Jacob DeGrom, a guy who's dealt with injury after injury, um, having Tommy John surgery twice. Now he's back with the Texas Rangers, and he's producing at such a high level. So it's great to see him back in an All-Star game. Max Fried for the Yankees, they're big free agent signing. He has been incredible for them. Um, Yusei Kikuchi from the Los Angeles Angels. He has been he's a guy that he obviously had to be represented, because the MLB has a rule that one team has a representative at the All-Star game, and he was the representative from the Los Angeles Angels, and he's having a solid season. But again, I think that when we get into some of the names that are going to be mentioned as some snubs, in my opinion, I think we'll kind of start to question maybe some of the fits that we've seen on this roster. Um, then you have Tariq Skubal, who's been arguably the best pitcher in baseball the last 2 years. Um, Shane Smith, the Rule 5 draft pick from the Chicago White Sox, has been great for them over his last few starts. He's been a little bit rocky, but throughout most of the season so far, he has been really, really good for the Chicago White Sox. And it's a fantastic story. A Rule 5 draft pick. I believe he's only the second um, Rule 5 draft pick to make an All-Star game since Dan Uggla. So for all of my guys who really know ball, you'll know Dan Uggla. And that's just a great story to see. And rounding out the starting pitchers for the All-Star game is Brian Wu from the Seattle Mariners. Um, and we'll get into my thoughts on Brian Wu making it shortly. And then relief pitchers to round out this entire roster. We've got Aroldis Chapman from the Red Sox, Josh Hader from the Houston Astros, and Andres Munoz from the Seattle Mariners, who has been one of the best, if not the best, closer in baseball this year. Now we're gonna talk about the NL. And then again, we're going to talk about the snubs towards the end of the episode. But the National League, we have at the catcher position, you've got Will Smith from the Dodgers, Freddie Freeman from the Dodgers, Ketel Marte from the Diamondbacks, who has been absolutely incredible this entire season. He missed some time early, and he came back with a vengeance. Also, as a baseball fan, I just want to give a quick shout out. I know this story happened a little bit ago, but when the Diamondbacks were in town facing the Chicago White Sox, um, Ketel Marte had to deal with a fan heckling him, and he mentioned something about his mother who passed away years ago. Um, I believe it was 2017, and we saw Ketel become very emotional on the field, and that has no place in sports. We hate to see that. It's a shame that that fan even thought to say something about his dead mother, um, and it just it rubs me the wrong way because we let people into these stadiums and to enjoy a baseball game, yet you want to um, disrespect the players and my personal opinion is that he probably bet on Ketel Marte or the Arizona Diamondbacks and something didn't go his way, so he said something very out of pocket. And it's a shame to see, but that fan has been banned, if I'm not mistaken, from not only the White Sox stadium, but across all MLB stadiums. So shout out to the MLB, shout out to the White Sox. Um, Everyone handled that exceptionally well. That, like I said, that has absolutely no place in sports. For you to say things like that, go out there, respect the game, respect the location that you're at, and most of all, I mean, respect yourself, right? I think when you show that you can say something like that about a person, it just shows that you aren't respecting yourself at all either. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to that. Shout out to Ketel Marte. He handled it. Um, and, he's been one of my favorite players for years. So that was very upsetting to see for me. But as we move forward, at third base, you've got Manny Machado from the San Diego Padres. At shortstop, you've got Francisco Lindor from the Mets. Outfield is Ronald Acuna Jr. from Atlanta. Pete Crow Armstrong from the Chicago Cubs, Kyle Tucker from the Chicago Cubs, and the DH is Shohei Ohtani from the LA Dodgers. Reserves are catcher Hunter Goodman from the Colorado Rockies, Pete Alonso from the Mets, Ellie De La Cruz from the Reds, um, Brendan Donovan from the St. Louis Cardinals, Matt Olson from the Atlanta Braves, Eugenio Suarez from the Diamondbacks, Corbin Carroll from the Diamondbacks. Outfield is going to be Corbin Carroll from the Diamondbacks, Kyle Stowers from the Miami Marlins, uh, Fernando Tatis from the Padres, James Wood from the Washington Nationals, and the DH is Kyle Schwarber from the Philadelphia Phillies. Starting pitchers, you've got Matthew Boyd from the Chicago Cubs, Mackenzie Gore from the Washington Nationals, Clayton Kershaw, LA Dodgers. He was a legacy pick. Handpicked for that roster for this All-Star game. It could be Kershaw's last uh, couple of runs in an All-Star game, and he missed some time due to recovering from an injury. So he was the legacy pick for this All-Star game. Then you have Freddie Peralta from the Milwaukee Brewers, Robbie Ray from the San Francisco Giants, Chris Sale from the Atlanta Braves, and Chris Sale is currently on the injured list. Now, I think he will be replaced, and we'll talk about who I think should be his replacement towards the end of this episode once we get into those snubs as well. Then, of course, you have Paul Skeens from the Pittsburgh Pirates, Logan Webb from the San Francisco Giants, Zach Wheeler from the Philadelphia Phillies, who has been absolutely incredible this season. He is the front runner for the NL Cy Young so far. Then you have Yamamoto from the Dodgers, and then the relief pitchers rounding out this roster are Jason Adam, Edwin Diaz, and Randy Rodriguez. Now, I think that as we're now going to get into some of the snubs, but I think when you kind of look at things, those are great rosters, right? I really don't have too many discrepancies with the guys who were named to the All-Star team rosters. Now, I think my issue comes with some of the guys who weren't named to this roster. You know, Now as we shift into the snubs, we're going to start with the American League now, and we're going to talk about George Springer. And I don't want to get too deep into the analytics, and I don't want to pull up, uh, so many stats for you guys because I don't want to bore you guys. I just want to give you guys the simple stuff, and I want you guys to decide who was snubbed and who wasn't. So if you guys can, after you guys see this video and you see this portion, I want you guys to let me know. Am I wrong for thinking these guys were snubbed? Who do you guys think were snubbed from the MLB All-Star game? And yeah, so let's jump right into it. So first off, we're going to talk about George Springer, who has a 281 batting average, a 374 on base percentage, an 886 on base plus slugging percentage with 16 home runs and 53 RBIs. George Springer from the Toronto Blue Jays has had an incredible season so far. And, when they played the Yankees last week, we saw him have an incredible series. I believe he hit 4 home runs in that series alone, bringing multiple double-digit RBIs, scoring. I think he had 7 runs in that series alone. And again, I think he was a guy that when you look at that roster, right, from the American League as an outfielder, I think George Springer could have easily maybe replaced a guy like you know, uh, maybe a Stephen Kwan, maybe I just, it's tough because who should be maybe on this roster, but it's hard to take off someone with some of the season that these guys are having. But I mean, honestly, the only guy I can think of is maybe just Stephen Kwan. Um, Byron Buxton, I believe, was a great outfield pick. Julio Rodriguez was a great outfield pick. Riley Green, Aaron Judge, obviously. Um, Maybe Javier Baez shouldn't be starting. Maybe he should be a reserve this year because I know he started great, but he's fallen off a little bit. But I think George Springer was absolutely, in my personal opinion, one of the bigger snubs. And sticking with the offensive players, we're going to talk about Junior Caminero, who um, he has currently a 258 batting average, 301 on base, and an 808 OPS with 21 home runs, 57 RBIs. Now, I think again he's a guy that, in my personal opinion, is absolutely being snubbed from this All-Star game. When you see the production and on top of that, what the Tampa Bay Rays have done this year, competing at such a high level. I believe they are currently second in the American League East. So seeing that is that he was not able to make it, it it raises some question marks, So, but now we're going to talk about some of the pitchers from the Minnesota Twins. You've got Joe Ryan, who was, yes, we're going to talk about ERA. We're going to talk about win loss. Like I said, I want to keep it simple for you guys. But we're going to break it down really quickly, but without getting into too deep of analytics. So Joe Ryan was 8-4 with a 2.76 ERA with 116 strikeouts. Um, Framber Valdez was 10-4 with a 2.9 ERA and 115 strikeouts. Nathan Eovaldi was 5-3 with a 1.75 ERA and 80 strikeouts. Those are my guys as potential snubs. At least on the pitching side of things. And personally, I think Evaldi, he missed a significant amount of time. I believe he had only 77 innings pitched this season, which I think is the main reason why he wasn't selected to be a pitcher in this All-Star game. But, in my opinion, I think they were slightly more deserving than a Brian Wu, who his superficial numbers at 8-4 with a 2.77 ERA are very close to a Joe Ryan. But Wu plays in a very pitcher friendly park in Seattle, and when you look at some of the like in-depth analytics, Joe Ryan's numbers are better. And I think Joe Ryan could have easily made that team over a Brian Wu. Um, and again, Framber Valdez has been incredible for the Houston Astros this year. So seeing him not make it has raised some question marks as well. And then, of course, like I said, I think with Evaldi, the only thing that held him back was his lack of innings pitched, because he missed a good amount of time. This season. But those are three pitchers that I think easily could have made this roster. Um, and again, I think that when you take into consideration that each team has to have at least one representative on the All-Star rosters, I think that kind of forces some guys out, right? Like I think if you look at a a guy like a Shane Smith, would he have made it if it weren't for this rule? Absolutely not. Um, and then same thing with a Yusei Kikuchi from the Los Angeles Angels. I don't think he would have made it over a guy like Framber Valdez or Joe Ryan or Evaldi if this rule wasn't in place. Um, Other honorable mentions for offensive player snubs are Isaac Paredes, J.P. Crawford, Zach McKinstry. Zach McKinstry is having an incredible season for the Detroit Tigers right now. Same goes for Paredes and J.P. Crawford. All have had so far incredible seasons. And guys that, like I said, when you look at this overall roster, I think it's, especially comparing the American League to the National League, I think it's a little bit easier to say maybe those guys were snubbed on the AL side, but when you look at some of the other players that were picked, maybe they weren't snubbed, right? One of the only things that I did want to see was a Bobby Witt Jr. starting over a Jacob Wilson. Um, that was one of, as far as starters go, I think Javier Baez maybe could have been a reserve, and Jacob Wilson could have been a reserve, and swapping some of those guys who are currently on the reserve list into the starter roles. But now we're going to talk about the National League, and on the National League side is where things get a little bit more questionable, big time. Juan Soto, the one of the richest free agent signings in MLB history. Actually, the richest signing in MLB history, as he surpassed that Shohei Ohtani contract. Was snubbed from the All-Star game in a huge shock. We know that Soto had a very slow start to the season, but in the month of June, he really kind of took off, hitting 11 home runs. And he had a line of 263 batting average, a 396 on base percentage, and a 904 OPS with 21 home runs and 51 RBIs for the New York Mets this season. Since his slow start, kind of kept things very unlike him. I think that is why he was snubbed from the All-Star game. But after seeing what he's done over the last month or so, it's incredible that he was left off of this roster. It's a mind-boggling decision that he was left off of this roster. I think absolutely he is hands down the biggest snub of this all-star team. And, like I said, when you look at his numbers in the month of June alone, that those are Juan Soto-esque numbers. Those are the numbers that the New York Mets expected him to produce when they signed him to that 15-year, $700+ million contract, and he has, as of late, been living up to it. So, seeing him being snubbed from this roster was incredibly questionable. And I think when we look at this roster, yes, um, yes, the NL roster is stacked. When you look at the outfield position, with Ronald Acuna Jr., Pete Crow Armstrong, Kyle Tucker, Corbin Carroll, Kyle Stowers, Fernando Tatis Jr., James Wood, I think, again, the rule where one player has to be represented from every single organization in each respective league is what is playing a huge part in this. I think a guy like Kyle Stowers, he's had an incredible season for the Miami Marlins, but should he have been an all-star over a Juan Soto? And I don't think that's true. So, as we go down the list, we're going to stick with offensive players first. I think CJ Abrams, from the Washington Nationals, he was an all-star last year, and I think he's having, if you look at his numbers from last year at this point, and this year at this point, he's having a better year. CJ Abrams is batting 285 with a 356 on base percentage and 838 OPS with 12 home runs, 59 runs scored, 31 RBIs, and 19 stolen bases. He has been electric for that Washington Nationals team. But again, with how stacked this NL roster is, it's very hard to make this team. And, when you look at the shortstop or the infield position, should he have made it over a Brendan Donovan or an Ellie De La Cruz or a Francisco Lindor? Probably not. But maybe Brendan Donovan. But again, that one player from every team has to be represented rule, I think, is coming into effect again. And, another guy who I think was a massive snub was Michael Busch. He's batting 297 with a 384 on base, and 950 OPS, which is, by the way, sixth in Major League Baseball, with 18 home runs and 56 RBIs. I understand that he's done a lot of damage over the last couple of weeks at Wrigley Field, but just seeing that he is not in this lineup is extremely questionable to me. And I think um, a guy um, like Michael Bush, I think he is a guy that absolutely is deserving of this All-Star nod, and it, he it just absolutely was snubbed after seeing his numbers. And then you sticking with that Chicago Cubs team, you have Seiya Suzuki, who's fully embraced the DH role on this team. He's batting 263 with a 319 on base and an 880 OPS with 25 home runs and 77 RBIs, which ranks first in Major League Baseball. How is he not on this roster? Um, I don't understand. And you know, another guy who I think was snubbed was Andy Pages. Pages is batting 290 with a 329 on base with an 826 OPS, 17 home runs, 58 RBIs for the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's having an incredible season, right? But I think the big thing is the fact that as when you look at this team, the Dodgers had so many picks already to represent them in the All-Star game. It's tough to include a guy like Pages in that. But, obviously a guy like Ronald Acuna Jr., who is electric, he's one of the best young players in baseball. He missed a significant amount of time, yet he is going to be starting in the All-Star game. And I just think for that, it definitely took away a spot from a guy like Andy Pages. And I'm not saying that Ronald Acuna Jr. is undeserving at all. Please do not come for me in the comments saying that he is an all-star. He's playing at home in Atlanta. He absolutely deserves it. The fans voted him in. Yes, I agree with all that. Ronald Acuna Jr. is a fantastic player. He is one of the most exciting, electric players to watch in baseball. I mean, obviously, we saw his incredible record-breaking season a few years ago with the 40-70, and it was unheard of. And then, so seeing that, um, you understand what Ronald Acuna Jr. is capable of. And of course, as soon as he came back from injury, a very tough injury at that, he is producing at such a high level. So shout out to Ronald Acuna Jr. But I do think that Andy Pages was indeed snubbed of a roster spot on this All-Star team. But I think if this young star can continue to produce at this level for this Dodgers team, we will see him in a future All-Star game. So definitely think that's the case when it comes to Andy Pages. But another guy, in my opinion, who might have been snubbed was Trey Turner from the Philadelphia Phillies. He's batting almost 300 at 299. He has a 351 on base with an 802 OPS. He has 22 stolen bases, 11 home runs, 39 RBIs, 61 runs scored. And, the Philadelphia Phillies, again, are one of the best teams in baseball. And not seeing him represented, I don't even think he's the biggest snub on this Phillies team. That's the crazy thing. And we're going to jump right into the pitchers now. Number one is Christopher Sanchez. He's, again, we're going to keep the pitching numbers very simple, very, very understandable. I don't want to get too deep into analytics and sabermetrics and all of that stuff, but Christopher Sanchez is 7-2 with a 2.68 ERA and 108 strikeouts. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball, one of the best pitchers, obviously, in the National League, and he has been snubbed. Now, personally, I think I mentioned that Chris Sale is on the injured list right now, and I think that the number one choice to replace him should absolutely be Christopher Sanchez. He is, in my opinion, absolutely deserving of an all-star spot. Um, so we'll see who's named as an all-star pitcher in replacement of Chris Sale. But I just personally, I genuinely think that Christopher Sanchez shouldn't even be an injury replacement. I think the guy should have absolutely made this roster. Um, And an honorable mention for me as a snub from the National League is Geraldo Perdomo from the Arizona Diamondbacks. I just think that one of the main reasons why he wasn't picked is obviously because they already have a few representatives. They have Eugenio Suarez, they have Corbin Carroll, and they have Ketel Marte that are going to be representing them from the Arizona Diamondbacks. But yeah, guys, I mean, there were so many guys that I think were snubbed in this All-Star team picking this year, and it's really tough to see at times because there are so many guys that deserve it. But then when you look at these rosters, it's hard to decide who should be removed. I think that's the hardest thing to pick is, yeah, you can argue your case for player X, Y, or Z, but who are they going to replace based on the season that they're having? Um, so now, before we wrap this episode up, I just want to have your guys' opinions. Who was snubbed? Who do you guys think was snubbed? Who do you guys think um, should not have made these All-Star rosters? And I want to end it with a bang of a question. Do you guys think that the MLB's rule for one team or one representative from each team needs to be changed? Yes or no? I believe this is one of the only All-Star games that has that rule, if not the only All-Star game that has that rule that each team must have at least one representative. Do you guys think that rule should be changed? Um, I'm a little bit indifferent because I do love to see that you're not going to see a team that has 8 players, right? I don't really want to see that, but sometimes I just feel like there are maybe some other guys that are a little bit more deserving than others. Um, so let me know in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. I really would love to hear this. And quick side note, I know that from last week's episode, we haven't posted really any snippets or short form videos, but we are going to get a bunch of those videos out shortly alongside with these short form videos from this episode. So make sure you guys stay on the lookout for that stuff. We are ready and rolling with the content for the next week or so with all of the short form stuff. This episode will be posted tomorrow morning, and tomorrow being Tuesday, July 8th. And yeah, man, I'm really excited to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments on what you guys think. Who was snubbed from the MLB All-Star game? What are your thoughts on the Lakers signing Deandre Ayton? What are your thoughts on the 3-team trade that went down today with the Miami Heat, the Utah Jazz, and Los Angeles Clippers? I want to hear all of that in the comments below. And don't forget, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, on TikTok, and we are going to be posting content for you guys very soon on those other platforms. We love seeing you guys interact with those. um, we want to branch out and make sure that you guys have the Figures of Sport podcast on all of your platforms. And don't forget to, if you don't have time to sit and watch our 30-minute videos on YouTube, they are on Apple Podcasts, they are on Spotify. And I believe Spotify, we also have the video attached to it. So don't forget that. But yeah, guys, we are super excited for you guys to check out some of those other forms of content that we have coming out for you guys. And we will catch you guys on the next episode.